Welcome to Module 8. It's about truth functional logic. We're kind of the extension of that. The previous module, which was mainly about translations, basically just beginning the truth tables. What this one does is you can use these truth tables to evaluate statements. You can find out if the truth value is always true. Sometimes statements are constructed in a way that they basically are tautologous, which means that the conclusion is always true. There's statements that sometimes they're just always true. Like, for example, the statement, I always like this example, which I'm sure I'll mention in the lessons, that, like if somebody always says, it's always in the last place you look. Well, of course something's always in the last place you look. Who keeps looking after they've found something, right? And so that's what's called tautology. It's an always true statement. And so sometimes it's the form that, if you state things like this is true or this is true, it's either true or not true. That's always going to be true, right? It's either true or not true. I mean, there's no real middle ground in certain things. And so there's tautology. There's self-contradictory statements. There's statements that are contingent. And then you can compare statements, and you can then use these truth tables to evaluate validity. Now, all this to say is this is going to be a lot of T's and F's doing these big charts. And a lot of people find this, right? But the case is that as far as these truth tables go, as far as all that goes, as far as truth tables go, the biggest thing about this is just be careful when you're doing them. You get one T or one F in the wrong spot, or you look at one, or you start one column wrong, you'll mess up the whole thing, right? And so you need to be very careful. This is kind of, to a large degree, I think one of the values of doing truth tables, besides just understanding the concept of validity, I think it helps with that, and contradictory, self-contradictory, things like that. I think other than understanding those concepts and illustrating that, I think the best thing about this is also that it just forces you to be very, very, very careful. One of the things is oftentimes our brains work a lot faster than our ability to discern things. And this really forces you have to slow down and be careful. I also teach journalism. I have been a copy editor. One of the things, like when you're a copy editor, is you're reading sentences and you are charitable, right? So sometimes you just read the sentence the way they meant it to be rather than the way it is. And so you have to be able to slow down and force your brain to not be charitable in your reading of a statement if you're going to actually edit it. And that same thing is true with headlines. Like if you have a headline in a newspaper or a magazine or something, I work for newspapers, but if you put the headline in there, sometimes you read it, and if you don't sit there and look at each word carefully to make sure it's spelled correctly, you oftentimes overlook the fact that words are misspelled because you are being charitable in your process. And the same thing is here too. You have to come up with methods to force yourself to be more careful in watching these things. And that's what I think one of the values of truth tables is.